service to storytelling and all they have contributed to its promotion and growth throughout Texas and beyond. The first award that will be presented is the Marven Brown Volunteer Service Award. This award is given in honor of Marven Brown, who spent hours serving in the TSA office, volunteering his time with storytelling events across the state of Texas, as well as helping future youth tellers as coach and supporter. He was the epitome of volunteer service. The recipient of the Marven Brown Volunteer Service Award is a person and sometimes a group whose contributions of time and talents to TSA have enhanced the reputation of the organization in the greater Denton area, the state, and beyond. The Marven Brown, can I get a drum roll? All right, that's good. The Marven Brown Volunteer, because we only got 15 minutes, and the timer said those were not storytelling minutes. The Marven Brown Volunteer Service Award for 2026 is being presented to, we had the drum roll too early. There you go. To Hank Roubicek. Here are some things that were said about Hank in his nomination, and from the letters of support that were received on his behalf. Hank Roubicek, don't be shy, come forward. He's a little shy, right? Consistently finds ways to support storytelling in Houston and across Texas, says his nominator. He is truly deserving of this award, says another of his supporters. Hank brings a rare combination of passion and expertise to everything he does to promote storytelling both in Houston, the state of Texas, and beyond. For nearly 2 decades, Hank hosted and directed Houston's first major storytelling program, So What's Your Story? On 90.1 KPFT, Houston's Pacifica radio station. The show featured live storytelling by tellers primarily from around the state. Over the years, Hank mentored co-hosts for the show, some of whom have gone on to become award-winning tellers themselves, as well as published authors. Several years ago, he transitioned from radio to podcasting, continuing to support diverse storytellers through the podcast, The Story Voice. Hank is a longtime member and leader of the Houston Storytellers Guild, where he has served as president, newsletter editor, board member, and continues to serve as treasurer. As valuable as Hank has been to the Houston Storytellers Association, he has also been integral in supporting TSA, serving as board member, program organizer, workshop presenter, chair of the awards committee, and working to plan and organize the 2024 TSA conference that was held in Houston. Notably, Hank not only authored a segment for the 40 Years of Texas Storytelling, TSA's 40th anniversary book, but also edited, get this, every biography in the book. Beyond the airwaves, the classroom, and the performance stage, weekly Hank tells the stories of the Holocaust to visitors of the Holocaust Museum in Houston, many of whom are school children who otherwise might not know about this tragic period in our history. Hank's nominator sums it all up by saying, Hank does everything he does, whether for TSA, the Houston Storytellers Guild, radio programs, podcasts, for one simple reason. He loves storytelling and building a storytelling community. And we love you, Hank. Yeah? Yeah. And salute you for your love of and dedication to storytelling and the many ways you serve to support it. Fellow storytellers, and lovers of story, let us welcome this year's Marven Brown Service Award winner, Hank Roubicek.
When you go to 2 minutes. Am I done?
Okay, yeah. The one who told me it was not storytelling time.
Right. And now I have to keep to my own instructions. Yeah. Thank you so much. You know, nobody told me really at all. I was absolutely shocked. Genuinely. Just like one of those people at the awards assembly who says, "Oh, I'm so shocked." And they have their notes right? That's not me. I am very, very grateful and the accolades and those comments, I'm not sure that I deserve all of them, but it's so kind of you to consider me, acknowledge me, recognize me, because this, in my opinion, awards assembly is one of the most important things that we do. Thank you very much, and I love all of you. Thank you.
And I get to take a little extra time just so you can know all the wonderful things that the folk we are celebrating are really doing and of the hard work that they're putting out there for you on our behalf. The next award that will be presented is the Martha Land Nelson Special Services Award. This award is given occasionally, not every year, and it is given to recognize above and beyond service to TSA and to the storytelling community within the state and the nation. The services of this person have made a notable impact upon the profession of storytelling, as well as the visibility and contributions of the Texas Storytelling Association. This year's winner of the Martha Land Nelson Award is Michael Grundy. What Michael's nominator said, "It is my pleasure to recommend that our Texas Storytelling Association's president, Michael Grundy, receive the Martha Land Nelson Special Services Award for his continual effort to lift the bar for TSA. Michael Grundy is a dedicated and passionate leader, and those of you who know him and see him in action could attest to this, whose contributions of time and talent have significantly enhanced the reputation and reach of the Texas Storytelling Association within the greater Denton area and beyond. His unwavering commitment to the storytelling community has strengthened the association's presence on local, state, and regional levels, ensuring its continued growth and success. As the current president of TSA, Michael has played a pivotal role in the organization's development. Under his leadership, TSA has expanded its influence, supporting local storytelling guilds throughout Texas and the surrounding region. His vision has led to the creation of new storytelling guilds, including one in New Mexico, and the official integration of the Oklahoma Territory Tellers as a recognized guild within TSA. These efforts have broadened TSA's reach, fostering connections among storytellers and strengthening the storytelling community at large. Michael has spearheaded innovative initiatives such as the Master the Art of Storytelling series. This groundbreaking program provides interactive workshops and educational opportunities, empowering individuals to hone their storytelling craft. Through his initiative, Michael has connected experienced storytellers with those eager to develop their skills, reinforcing TSA's commitment to education and mentorship. By integrating online workshops and virtual events, he has expanded TSA's accessibility, allowing participants from across the nation and even internationally to engage with the art of storytelling. Michael views challenges as opportunities, one of his supporters says, for growth rather than obstacles. Whether he sees a need, wherever he sees a need, he sets out to meet it. and invites others along to help meet it as well. He lifts others as he climbs. He is a visionary, a trailblazer, a change agent, an advocate, and a steadfast supporter of all that helps the art of storytelling and storytellers themselves to grow. His warm and welcoming nature has made him an invaluable figure within TSA. Get this, they said universally regarded. All right, Michael. Universally regarded as one of the kindest and most approachable members of the organization, he fosters an environment where all storytellers feel valued and supported. Michael's dynamic leadership, innovative vision, and unwavering dedication have left a lasting impact on TSA, ensuring its continued success for years to come. Through his efforts, Michael has not only strengthened TSA, but has also enriched the storytelling community as a whole. His passion for storytelling, commitment to service, and exceptional leadership have positioned TSA as a thriving organization, enhancing its reputation and influence across Texas and beyond. Fellow storytellers and lovers of story, join me in congratulating Michael Brundy, this year's recipient of the Martha Lynn Nelson Special Services.
Thank you, everyone. What I think about is all those folks who mentor me, support me, and tell me which way I need to be going, folks who came before me, and then those who help me currently. I couldn't do much of nothing without Carol, and that's a big reason why we are successful, because we have such great staff, as well as we got good people. So without you guys, couldn't have done this, and hey, I appreciate being acknowledged. Pretty cool. And just so that you do know, there was a little birdie. Sue, I ain't that dumb. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, now we get to the main event. All of you who've been here this morning, you listened to the feature tellers. So you know that we're in for a treat, right? And I'm glad all of them have bios and websites, because the truth is that there's no introduction adequate enough to really punctuate the accomplishments and the skill sets of all of these tellers. But I'll try to offer a few things that might complement the great job that Kathy did this morning in talking about each. When I was listening to the stories this morning, I don't know all of these people, but I listened very carefully, thinking about what can I access from this? What do I know about them? Well, the first thing that I noticed about Alton Chung is that everyone can really benefit from the depth and soul of the stories he told. Because I know that he's known for tailoring programs and performances for any event and for any audience. His extensive repertoire is fueled by an equally extensive experience. And many of the stories, I'm impressed by this in particular, many of the stories are meant to heal. And I'm always thinking about that word. I know that so many of us are interested in storytelling and healing, but they're interested in healing. He's interested because he thinks that family stories in particular and how we collect them is the best way to create a legacy. And what I really love about this idea is the fact that it's intergenerational. So parents have to tell their stories to their children, children to their children, on and on and on. And this chain is never broken. And that's what I find so remarkable. And Alton has done that. He's inspired many families to do that. So whether your memories are good, bad, whether they're troubling, whether they're peaceful, it's important to be able to tell stories about these life cycles to the people that matter most, your family. Also, his stories connect to history, culture, and tradition. And this is pretty impressive because his program, for example, which centers on the Japanese-American experience in World War II, is a cross-examination of cross-generation masterpiece. And it inspires us to share stories with children and grandchildren, and again, to not break that chain. Alton also is a specialist in Hawaiian folktales, Asian folktales, and ghost stories. He's one of those rare storytellers who can take us on journeys and take us on many places, and very thoughtfully and very eloquently convey a clear message about what that story was meant to communicate. J. O'Hallahan calls Alton among the most powerful artists he ever enjoyed. And J. O'Hallahan is a pretty credible person, right? So, let me bring up Alton Chung, and we'll appreciate it, right?
Thanks. And now for something completely different. There once was a father who had two sons. The older son, he was sensible, he was smart. The younger son, not so much. I mean, he was good looking, he was good natured, but he was always just one sandwich short of a picnic. I mean, at night when they heard ghost stories around the fire, those types of stories that made your goosebumps rise, and made your flesh crawl. Inevitably, someone would say, "Ooh, that made me shudder." And the younger son would be sitting in the corner looking puzzled. It made me shudder. What do they mean by that? This must be one of those things I'll never really understand. Well, one day, the father called to his younger son and said, "Oh, well, your brother's going to inherit the land, but you need to learn a trade. Well, what is it you want to learn?" "Well, father, I would like to learn what it means to shudder." "All right, here's a bag with 50 silver pieces, and I'll also give you my most treasured sacred item, the holy rubber chicken of Antioch. May it protect you forever. And now, go forth, learn what you can, and may you be happy." And so he did. He went forth and with his bag of silver and the holy rubber chicken of Antioch, and he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked. And he kept thinking to himself, "Oh, I wish I could shudder. I wish I could shudder." And at last, the sun was going down, he entered an inn. And he walked up into the inn, he muttered under his breath, "I wish I could shudder." Well, the landlord heard this, and he laughed. "Well, boyo, if that be your desire, that'd be a great opportunity just down the road. You see, there's a haunted castle down there. And it's so haunted that I'm sure there's ample opportunity for you to learn how to shudder. In fact, it's so haunted that the king has decided that anyone who can spend 3 nights in that haunted abode will have his daughter as a bride. Now, she is the most beautiful and most clever woman that this sun has ever shone upon. And besides, there's supposed to be a great treasure in that castle, but it's protected by evil spirits. Now, many men have tried, gone up to that castle, but none have survived. So, the young youth went up to the king and asked him to spend 3 nights in the castle. And the king looked at him and he arched his eyebrow in that kingly manner because, after all, he was a king. And he looked at his lean frame, his chiseled features, and his slightly goofy and vacant smile. He thought to himself, "Oh, this is son-in-law material." Oh. And he thought about it, but he is rather attached to that rubber chicken. Well, he said, "All right, well, you can spend 3 nights at the castle, but you can have 2 things with you. What 2 things would you like to have me brought to the castle for you?" The lad stood there in uffish thought, not too slow, not too fast, just very thorough. He said, "I would like to have the makings of a big fire, and I would like a hand lathe." Well, the king again arched his eyebrow in that kingly fashion. Well, that afternoon, makings for a fire and a hand lathe were brought into that haunted castle. And as darkness descended, the lad went up there. The fog had rolled in. Now that castle looked like a dead man's hand rising out of the mist. its crumbling and broken towers reaching up like skeletal fingers as if to go and snatch the waxing moon out of the sky. Then he walked in there and he found in these broken rooms piles of just broken and moldy furniture. And in the inner, more protected rooms, they found cobwebs and moss and greasy pools of unknown ichor. And here and there were bits of feather and fur, which adorn these decaying and partially eaten small corpses of small creatures and not so small creatures. Well, in the least disgusting of rooms, he built a nice bright fire. And he sat there in front of popped himself for that lathe, and he began making candlestick holders out of the extra firewood. Around about midnight, you heard a keening sound. It started low and got louder and louder, and then there's dead silence. And there, falling out of the chimney, there was a body. It looked rather blue. I said, oh, must be cold up there. Let me go build up the fire for you, my frozen friend. And he's bent stoking up the fire. And when he turned back around, that blue person was sitting there in the corner looking at him. And more of these zombies began falling out of the chimney, each more disgusting than the last. One had an axe out of his head. He complained of a headache. Another one had his hole in his abdomen, and she said she's always hungry. Another man had the lower part of his face just gone. He didn't say much. But they got these 9 decaying human legs and these 2 putrid skulls. And this band of zombies went to the far end of the room. They set up those legs and began rolling down the skulls, trying to knock down the legs. And they would moan and wave their hands whenever someone ordered an especially good putrid head and knocked down all 9 of those legs. They were having a grand time. And the boy said, well, may I join you? Depends. Do you have any money on you, boy? Well, money enough, but your balls are not round. And he took those skulls and he put it in his hand lathe. He began turning them and shoving off the little knobbly bits until they're much more rounder. He said, look, now we can have some fun. And they did, because that's how they rolled. This went on and on and on until dawn. And then at dawn, each of his zombie friends disappeared in a puff of purple smoke. And even those 9 putrefying legs and 2 disgusting skulls, they disappeared in puffs of smoke too, as well as 10 of his silver pieces. Well, having nothing else better to do, the lad sat down, curled up, and went to sleep next to his fire. Well, the king showed up the next day and saw this boy laying amongst his pool of blood and gore and knobbly bits. He thought, well, so much for the boy. Too bad. And his rubber chicken. Well, as soon as he said, lad heard the king, he woke up. And he looked at the king, and the king kind of arched his eyebrow again in that kingly manner. Well, the second night, again, he built up the fire. And again, around midnight, he had another visitation. This time, out of the shadows, there came 6 ghouls wearing little red berets, carrying a coffin. Their complexion was gray and pasty. Their eyes were all bloodshot, and they were in disarray. One was missing a hand, another had a hole in his chest. The tallest one had his left eye bouncing along his left cheek, hanging by its optical nerve. And they all carried this coffin, and they stunk. They were rotting. They laid the coffin down, and all these ghouls kind of laid up against the wall, looking bored, rotting, and, well, dead. And then they took out these black cigarettes and began lighting them up, and they tried blowing smoke rings, and those cigarettes just stunk even worse than they did. And the boy said, well, you know those things will kill you. And the ghouls looked at the cigarette, they looked at each other, they looked back at the boy, and they sort of shrugged as if to say, too late, boyo. Well, he went over and looked at that coffin. That coffin looked familiar. It was the coffin his cousin had been buried in years before. And he opened up the coffin, and sure enough, there was his cousin looking as fresh as the day he was buried. Some really rotting flowers and some very confused worms. But when he touched his cousin's cheek, oh, it was freezing cold. Sort of like a brass brazier on a frozen winter's day. But the boy kind of remembered that 2 people curled up in bed can warm each other. Science was not this boy's long suit. Then again, nothing really was. I mean, in his world, 1 + 1 = blue. He was just wired a little differently than everyone else. Well, he pulled his cousin out of the coffin, he put him into that crumbling bed, pulled that moldy cover over him, and he snuggled up next to him to get him warm. And sure enough, he did. And the body of his cousin began to move. Ah! Is this not well, cousin? Have I not warned you? Yes, you have, cousin, and I thank ye. But now you can take my place in my cold coffin. Is this how you repay me? Yeah. Back in your coffin. And he picked up his cousin by his rotten lapels, threw him back into the coffin, and slammed the lid down. The ghouls looked shocked. That one, the tall one, put his eye up back into his socket and looked at him with new eyes. The pounding on the inside of the lid of the coffin got weaker and weaker as the second law of thermodynamics reasserted itself. In other words, the cousin cooled off. And then the ghouls picked up that coffin and disappeared into the shadows. Well, the third night was even colder than the previous two. The boy warmed himself around his meager fire, and at midnight, there came another visitor, a tall, pale visitor. He walked into the room, and he seemed to glow with a weird greenish light that lit his way. He was tall. He was evil and regal. He had an aquiline nose, a widow's peak. His complexion was gray like a corpse, and he had a long, gray, flowing beard that went well below his waist. He looked at the boy in a glance, and his pupils like pools disappearing into nothingness. And he walked with the grace of a dancer, and walked with the solid assurance of someone who always got what he wanted. He exuded an aura of power, of guile, and treachery. You, boy, you will shudder tonight because you are going to die. I'm just as strong as you are, even stronger. A contest then, and you will shudder as you beg for your life. Shudder? Cool. And so he followed this glowing man down deep, deep, deep into the bowels of this castle until they came to a smith. And there, the strange man picked up a hammer and he walked up to an anvil and with one blow, slammed that anvil down to the ground so it almost disappeared. And he smirked and sneered at the boy and motioned to the other anvil there. So the boy walked up to that anvil, that man with the long gray beard, he walked up so he could get a closer look to see what the boy was going to do. But instead of grabbing a hammer, the boy grabbed an axe. And with one blow, he almost split that anvil in two. But in doing so, he also caught the man's beard in amongst the axe head and the split anvil. And he said, now it's your turn to shudder. And he began beating the man with the holy rubber chicken of Antioch. Riches! I'll give you riches if you just stop beating me with that stupid chicken and let me go! What? Riches? Okay. The boy relented and he pulled out that axe, freeing the man's beard, but he kept that rubber chicken around just in case. And that man took him deeper and deeper down into a sub-basement, and there were 3 chests of gold. One chest you may keep for yourself. The second one goes to the poor. And the third goes to the king. The king? Why should the king get any of this gold? Taxes, boyo. And with that, he disappeared. And the boy was left in this dark sub-basement with no light at all. Well, this sort of... He began feeling his way along the wall, and he eventually found his way back up to his room after slipping and falling into something squishy and bumping his head against a couple low beams. Well, the next morning, the king found him. He said, whoa, have you learned to shudder yet? No, I met the man with glowing and long gray beard, and he took me down to the sub-basement, and there's a bunch of gold down there, but I haven't learned to shudder. It's one of the things I'll probably never learn for the rest of my life. Gold? Oh, my boy, you have discovered the mystery of this beautiful castle. And now, being that I am the misogynistic and essentially greedy and clueless king that I am, I will offer you my daughter as your bride. What do you say? Well, okay, but as long as it's okay with her. Simple, not stupid. And so the gold was brought up, and the king got the part of his gold. He was happy, and the daughter kind of looked at this young man. She thought, he's okay. Well, good enough for first marriage. And so they were wed. And no matter how happy he was, no matter how happy they were together, he always muttered to himself, I wish I could shudder, which just ticked his clever wife off no end. That man is going to learn how to shudder if it kills him. And so she ordered her servants to go and bring her a bucket full of live wiggly eels. And that night, as the boy slept, she carefully removed the bedclothes and picked up that bucket of water and eels and dumped it on top of him. That icy cold water and all those wiggly eels splashed all over him, and those eels, they wiggled and went every single which way. There were eels in his ears, eels in his nose, eels in his mouth, and eels where the sun doesn't shine. And the boy, he stood up and he began shivering and shaking and stuttering and sparking and he couldn't breathe. He began a short breath. He broke out in a cold sweat. He said, why am I moving this? Oh, my brilliant wife, is this what it means to shudder? Yes, my dear husband. Now it is your turn to make me shudder. And they carefully avoided the wet spot, and they lived happily ever after. Summer between 5th grade and 6th grade, my best friend Kyoki and I, we decided that we needed a tree house. We needed a place where we could read our comic books, drink our grape soda, and sing as loud as we wanted to our Beatles songs. And so, behind Kyoki's aunt's house, there was a rainforest. And we found the perfect tree house tree. It was a monkey paw tree next to a stream. And we sort of got what we needed. There's several vacant lots of people just dump stuff. And there was an abandoned house down the way. And we got whatever we needed. Whatever else we couldn't find, we got from Kyoki's garage. And it was great. I mean, we were able to build a table and stools and even a cabinet where we could put our comic books, our grape soda, and our radio cassette player. And this treehouse became our spaceship, our World War II tank, a medieval castle, whatever we needed it to be. And we could play our Beatles songs as loud as we wanted and sing along in our out-of-tune, prepubescent voices. And it was great until Richard and his gang decided to build a tree fort in the mango tree on the other side of the creek. Now, Richard was the most popular guy in the 5th grade. Everyone wanted to be in his gang. They didn't want Kyoki or me. Now, Richard's gang consisted of Ross, who was his lieutenant, and about 3 or 4 other guys. And that's it, they built their tree fort. And see, we love the Beatles. But Richard and his group, they loved the Rolling Stones. And anytime we cranked our music up really loud, they'd yell at us and they'd call us names and tell us to turn the music down. Well, one day, Kyoki and I were in our treehouse and we heard all this arguing. We poked our heads up over our plywood wall and we looked over and there was Gail, looking up at Richard in his treehouse, yelling at him. Gail was the smartest girl in the entire class. Well, why can't I join your club? Well, it's because, we're pirates, and the name of this treehouse is called the Revenge after Blackbeard's ship, and no one ever heard of a girl pirate, and no girls are allowed. Well, that's a stupid rule, and there weren't 2 girl pirates. No, they weren't, and you're stupid. Even social reprobates like me and Kyoki knew you do not count the smartest girl in the class as stupid. We hunkered down as we watched the hurricane called Gale move away. Well, a couple weeks later, we heard all this giggling and laughing coming from Richard's treehouse. Now, by this time, they really had embraced this pirate. They had a little sign that says Revenge. They all wore little paper hats. They all began speaking like pirates. And then all of a sudden, I hear Rich call out, Avast ye beetleheads, we got something for ye. And I stood up and I looked over at Richard's treehouse. And there's Richard, he has his tube on his shoulder, and Ross is fiddling with something in the back of the tube. And we hear this boom, and I see this yellow streak before something whoop, hits me in the chest. And I'm covered with rotten mango pieces, mango pulp in my face and my hair. And Kilky and I just stand there stunned. We couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Kilky steps out of this stupor, right? He gets a rag, starts cleaning me off, and next thing you know, whoo, splat! And again, Kilky's hitting the back of the rotten mango. Mango pulp goes flying into his hair, into my hair, and my face, and we hear on the other side, "Ha-ha! Vast ye landlubbers, a two-for! Ah, shiver me timbers, 2 for 1!" Well, Kilky and I, we had enough. We opened our trap door, we scurried down those boards that we had nailed into the monkey pod tree trunks, so we climbed down, and we're running away, and we hear Richard and his grandfather laughing and saying, "Where are the kings of the forest? Where are the kings of the forest?" Well, now we had to do our long walk of shame back through the neighborhood. All the younger kids are pointing at us and laughing at us. And here we are covered with mango pulp in our hair and our t-shirts and our faces. Our cheeks are red with shame. Tears are rolling down our sticky faces. We pass by Gail's house, and Gail just stares at us and watches us walk by. As we wander by with this cloud of fruit flies following us. Well, after that, we wouldn't play our music very loud, and whenever we heard Richard and his crew in their treehouse, we quietly just wandered away. We wouldn't go to our treehouse unless we knew that Richard and his team were someplace else. And when we played our music, we never sang along, we just played it very softly. One day we heard someone calling us, and so we opened the trap door and looked down. It was Gail. She was looking up. "You guys want to get back at Richard? I have a plan, but I got to join your club. I want to be a full member of your club. Is that a deal?" And I looked over at Kilky. "We got a club?" "Okay. Beatles or Stones?" "Beatles, of course." "Okay, you're in. Come on up." Now, Gail had done some snooping around. She realized that Richard had built what they call a potato cannon, except he was using rotten mangoes. He said, Richard gets a rotten mango, climbs all the way down the muzzle to the combustion chamber, and he fires it off using hairspray as a propellant and a friction sparker to ignite the hairspray. Kilky and I had no idea what he was talking about. We just nodded. He said, but there are a couple flaws to his design. First of all, he has to unscrew the back of his potato cannon, fill it with hairspray, and cork it back up. That slows down his reload time. And then the friction sparker, he can't fire it by himself. He has to hold it and aim it, but the friction sparker sometimes doesn't go off. So he has to get someone else to twist that thing, and that throws off his aim. Again, we just nodded. My design answers all of those questions. So we said, okay. We went to the hardware store. We bought PVC primer, we bought PVC glue, and a barbecue ignition starter switch. And then when Gail told the shopkeeper that we were building a science project, he pointed us to the back, to the scrap PVC bin. He said, help ourselves. We made several trips. Now, we built Gail's cannon in Kyoki's garage. And whenever a Beatles tune came on the radio, we all got up and we began dancing and singing along. Kyoki said that we were like the three amigos. And Gail said, well, technically we're two amigos and an amiga, because they're two guys and a girl. And Alton said, you're not a girl, you're a buddy. And she looked at me and she looked like she was about ready to cry. Girls are weird. Well, we got it. When the gun was finished, we disassembled it, we took it back to our treehouse. Now, Gail had been experimenting with gelatin rounds. We'll get to that a little bit later on. I mean, this gun was a thing of beauty. I mean, it had a base that you could twist and you could tilt the gun. And there was a tube from the hairspray can into the sealed combustion chamber, so we didn't have to take it apart. And then the back of the cannon had these two hand grips, and one of them had a little button, which was the barbecue ignition switch, which ignited the hairspray inside the combustion chamber. But the most innovative thing was our gravity feed magazine. It was just a plastic box. We cut the small sides off it, and we glued it to the back part of the muzzle. Now we cut a hole in the top of the muzzle, and we got a tin can we hammered out. Glued a handle to the tin can, and using that tin can with screws as guides, we could push it forward, opening up that hole in the muzzle. The round could drop into the muzzle, we close it back up. Now, again, Gail had been experimenting with these gelatin rounds. She got the two half tubes, but the same diameter as our muzzle. She hollowed out the middle part of each of these gelatins, put in chopped fruit, poured in new fresh gelatin, and got the other half of the hollowed out round and put it on top of the other, set it in the refrigerator. It's hardened. To test out the round, we figured that 3 squirts of hairspray would be enough to fire our cannon. Our target was a rock in the middle of the stream, so we lined it up. Now, Gail was gun captain, she fired the gun, that was her deal, and we were the gunnery sergeant. So Keoki worked the slide, I worked the hairspray. Ka-ching-ching, splat! That rock would hit dead center with that little Knox gelatin and fruit round. Fruit shrapnel went everywhere. We were yelling and screaming, yes, it worked, it worked, it worked. Now that we had proven concept, now it was time to really build good ammunition. Just down the road, there was a boat landing with guys who would clean their fish. They caught them. 3 days in a sealed bucket in hot sun. Keoki and I began making stinky fish gut rounds. Gail was busy building a special round just for Richard. Keoki and I didn't want to know. Well, when everything was ready, D-Day, we got our rounds in our cooler and we went back up to our treehouse. We set up the gun on top of the table, we covered it with a blanket. And now, because Richard had called his place the Revenge, we decided to call our treehouse the HMS Victory, after Lord Nelson's flagship. In the Battle of Trafalgar, Nelson defeated the combined Napoleonic fleets, Spain and France, and set up England to rule the waves for the next 100 years. We made a little British flag, we got a little sign that says HMS Victory, and we even got our own hats. Gail said gunnery captain, our hat said Gunny 1 and Gunny 2. And we sat there and waited. When we heard Richard and his group inside of their treehouse, we got the Beatles and we cranked it up really loud. It's been a hard day's night, and I've been sleeping like a dog. Oh, stop that noise, you Beetleheads. And I stood up and said, no, Richard, we get a right to play our music as loud as we want. No, you don't. This means war. Load me up, fellas. And I stood there and watched them as they loaded up the cannon, and I ducked down behind that plywood wall, and I hear this boom, splat. And then I poked my head back up and said, you want war, Richard? You got it. Clear for action. Raise the colors. And here's Keoki, flips up this little British flag, puts on a little sign that says HMS Victory, put on our hats, and then we pulled the blanket off the cannon. Richard and his crew just standing there looking at what we're doing. Ka-ching-ching, splat, ka-ching-ching, splat. Rotten fish gut rounds are hammering into the HMS Revenge. Oh, yes, stinky, yeah. And Richard and his crew start running away. He's got climbing down the tree. Richard's standing there, come back, you people, reload me. And then Gail says, time for the Richard round. And she gets the aluminum foil, takes it off the Richard round, drops it in the magazine, and Keoki and I just stare at this thing. And for the briefest moment, we felt sorry for Richard. Ka-ching-ching. Splat. Ah! Richard of the HMS Revenge was now covered with goopy, stinky dog poo. Keoki starts jumping up and down. We won! As Richard the Fragrant leaves the treehouse and runs running away. We start dancing. I'm dancing up and down. Gail's jumping up and down. And Gail does something very unexpected. She grabs my face with both of her hands. She pulls me in and gives me a kiss. Right on the lips. I forget how to breathe. It's pretty good. Well, Richard and his team never came back to that treehouse. They totally abandoned it. And then, that next fall, Gail went to this school for super brainy kids, and we lost contact. And she's probably either a brain surgeon or rocket scientist, or maybe both. But for the rest of that summer, we were the three amigos and the kings of the forest.
Thank you all. Thank you very, very much. That was great. Liz Weir is a Northern Irish children's writer and storyteller. And among her list of impressive works is her picture book collection, children's picture book collection. I think this is so valuable because it's so timely. It's designed to help our children understand the problems in a very complicated world, and obviously we've got one going on, right? That's the weakest term I can think of, actually. And she also draws from a lot of her experiences, more of her work experiences and observations. So, for example, from her work from working in the prison, she wrote When Daddy Goes Away and Chicka Boom Boom, and they're both drawn from her work in the prison. She's also a member of several organizations, but none so important as the Early Years organization, where she speaks to our children about racism, anti-bullyism, and respectism. Literally all those isms, because it's a special kind of field, a special kind of study. She also is very concerned about addressing issues about apathy and self-absorption of many children. Our kids are self-absorbed. Really? I mean, what kids are right now? Yeah, no kidding. They're self-absorbed, and she also finds ways to reach to them and make sure that she understands that anti-bullying and racism and disrespect for elders, it just fuels more hatred and intolerance. She is very passionate about working with children, and it shows because she received the Interaction Story Bridge Award given by the National Storytelling Network, and she was also given an MBE, that's not an MBA, an MBE, Member of the Order of the British Empire, awarded by the Queen or King for her service to arts and education. This is a very committed person. This is a person who I think is incredibly dedicated to our children, and it's so timely given the issues that her stories address. Liz?
Parts of Ireland, is that okay? Yeah. How many of you have been to Ireland? How many of you have been to Northern Ireland? See, fewer. Anyway, I'm going to take you to both parts. Is that all right? I've got my water here because I picked up a cold on the plane. If you go to the west of Northern Ireland, there's a county called Fermanagh, full of lakes. They say they measure it not so much in acres as in buckets of water. But if you go slightly south, there's one hill. They call it a mountain. It's more like a pimple to people here, you know. And it's called Benbow Mountain. And long ago, there was just one cottage up at the top of that mountain. And from that cottage, you could see counties all around. And the old man that lived there, the locals called him the Lord of Benbow. For sure, he was master of all he surveyed. That old man had had one son. Sadly, his wife had died, and he brought the boy up, hoping that the boy would love the land just as much as his father. But this young man could not wait to get away, to go and seek his fortune across England. So the first time he got a cow to take to the market, you know the story, he sold the cow, and he dressed himself up in fine clothes, headed over to England, little thinking about his poor father. His father didn't know if he was alive or dead. As the young man was walking around England dressed like a dandy, he came upon two huge gateposts, a sweeping driveway, a big house, think Downton. And as he was standing there looking at this, he heard a voice behind him say, "And who might you be?" And he turned around, and there was a beautiful looking young woman. And he said, I am the son of the Lord of Benbow. My father's estates or in Ireland. Oh, she said, my father's a duke. This is our home. Won't you come for tea? So, of course, the minute he got into this fine house, he thought, this is where I belong. And he started telling stories. He had the gift of the gab. His father's house, his father's estate. You know the story. Now, the Duke was a bit suspicious. He went to his library. See how I always get the library in. He went to his library and he brought down his books, Cabret's Peerage, Burke's Peerage, and he was looking up to see if he could find this Lord of Bemble. Not a trace. So he called his faithful servant. He said, I want you to go to Ireland, find the Lord of Bemble's castle, report back to me. Now, if I was to send you to that part of the world now, you'd have a job getting there. And this poor man, he was getting lifts on donkeys and carts. And as he got closer, he'd say, the Lord of Bemble's castle. And the people of Fermanagh would go, aye, surely, I keep on going. Laughing at this Englishman. So finally, it was getting dark, moonlit night, and he saw this lane going up a mountain we call a boreen. It's just the width of a cow, which is bull in Irish. And he said, up there, yes, the castle, oh yeah, keep on going. So he was stumbling up there in the moonlight. And he heard this noise, which was metal on metal, and he was heart scared. When he came around the corner, two goats butting their horns together, their chains jangling. He skirted round them. Goats can be fearsome. And there in the moonlight, no castle, a thatched cottage. Hadn't even a proper door, had a thing called a sugon doris, which is a door made of straw. Hello? Anybody home? The old man inside pulled back the straw mat, and the moonlight lit up the one-room cottage. Oh, stranger, he lost. Come in. Brought the poor young fella in. He was a little bit disoriented. Sit yourself down. He looked around. A little stool. He sat on it. Oh, you'll not go down the mountain tonight. You're lost. There was an open fire. There was a settled bed, an old bed built into the wall, and this stool. Oh, you'll stay here tonight. He thought, there's only one bed. Where am I going to sleep? The old man went out. He carried in a big lump of rushes, put them down in front of the fire. He reached the young man a cup of tea with goat's milk. Never tasted anything like it. But he was so exhausted he fell asleep and had a good sleep. The next morning, the old man lifted the rushes, threw them out, and reached the boy a bowl of stirabout, porridge, oatmeal you'd call it, with goat's milk. Do you know, it was good. And then the old man started the question, where did he come from? When he said England, to his horror, the old man started to cry. Oh, he said, I have a son. I don't know if he's alive or dead. People tell me he's in England. And he started talking with such love about his son. The young man's heart melted. And he realized what was going on. And he said, isn't that why I'm here? I'm here to tell you about your son. Your son is alive, he's well, he's living in England, and you know, he's going to marry the daughter of a duke. Well, the old man's tears of sorrow turned to tears of joy. And shaking the young man by the hand, he led him over, pulled back the straw mat, led him outside. And there in front of him, the beauty of Fermanagh with his lakes and green fields. Bid him farewell. Carefully the young man skirted around the goats, down the lane, and back to England. The Duke said, well, did you find the Lord of Bemble? We said, I did, sir. I did, your grace. Tell me. Well, he said, the Lord of Bemble's castle sits atop a very easily defended area. It's got the best views for miles and miles around. It's defended by an army so fearsome you can hear their weapons long before you get near the castle. The door to his castle, well, no carpenter in Ireland, in England would know how to make that. The lamp that lights his room, you, sir, with all your money, could never afford to buy. The food I ate there, I doubt if there's a chef in England would know how to make it. The bed I slept in, oh, it was used for me for the first time, and after me it was thrown out to be replaced for the next guest. He said, sir, I met the Lord of Bemble, and all I can say is that Your daughter is really lucky to be marrying the son of such a fine gentleman. I love that story. I have to tell you who it's from. It's from a man called George Sheridan. He was a man who wore a three-piece suit at all times. He had little half glasses and he'd peer over them. He heard his stories from his grandmother in the 1930s. When I went to visit him, he told me all his stories and he drove me around. I remember leaving my daughter to watch soap operas with his wife. She was about 10 at that time. While George drove me around, what George would do, he'd be telling you a story and he'd stop the car in the middle of the road. And a huge truck would come behind, beep, 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 beep. He wouldn't stop. He'd just keep on telling the stories. So he's long gone now, but I'm delighted to be able to bring him to you. And I usually say as a preface, I'm sort of buttering you up, I only usually tell that to intelligent audiences. Because you were ahead of me, weren't you? You were ahead of me. And that's a good story. So I'm taking you somewhere else now. I'm taking you near home. I live, as you maybe have heard before, in the Glens of Antrim, a very beautiful part of the world. And from my house, you look across at one of the 9 glens. A glen is like a valley that were hollowed out in the Ice Age. And I had a German intern who said to me, "Is there a story about that?" Pointing out the door. And I looked. And I said, "No, there's not." She said, in a very Germanic way, "I will make one for you." I said, "Thanks very much." So this is the story that she gave to me as a present. Now, I'm going to look around. There's a point in this story where you're going to know it's not an Irish story. I'm going to look to see if there's acknowledgement, all right? There was once a fire juggler, the finest in the whole land. When he juggled his flaming torches, crowds would gather round. And he would go home with pockets full of gold. When he got near his own house, his little son would meet him. Hand in hand, they'd walk up to the house. The boy telling his father about his day, the father telling his son about his day, and never was there a father so proud of his son, or a son so proud of his father. But one day, when he came home with pockets bulging with gold, the boy wasn't there. Puzzled, he started going up to the house and he heard his wife crying and sobbing. When he walked in, their son was lying in bed as white as the sheet that covered him. And his wife told them that their boy had been bitten by a poisonous snake and he would surely die. She started screaming because coming up the hill were the white women, Die Weiss and Frauen, the helpers of Father Death. And they come and they stretch out their long white fingers and they take the souls of children. He said, "No, they won't have my son. No." There was only one thing he knew how to do. He lit his torches and started juggling. And as he was juggling, the white women came in and stretched out their long white fingers and warmed themselves. For you see, they live far beneath the earth with Father Death. There's no light, there's no heat, there's no fire. And he juggled until his arms would break. And he thought, "Oh no, they're going to take my boy." And then he said, "Listen, I will make a deal with you. I will come and juggle for you if you let my son go free." And verschwunden. They disappeared, taking the fire juggle with them. The boy recovered, but they never saw the father again. But we know he's down there, juggling his wonderful fire. And as it comes up to the surface, it comes through layers and layers of damp earth. When it comes up opposite my house, it hangs like a mist in the valley. So if you're in Ireland and you're driving along and a fog comes down, don't worry, don't be afraid. It just proves a father's love for his child. Vader is the author of that story, and I just love it. It's inspired by Cornelia Funke, who's a German author. Lastly, wee quick story. How many of you saw Darby O'Gill and the Little People? A long time ago, yeah, 50s. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. I was inspired. Now, it wasn't Sean Connery with hair singing in a very bad Irish accent, no. It was the fairies, it was the Banshee. Now, do you know about the Banshee? No, I don't mean the Banshees of Inisherin. Didn't like that film at all. But anyway, the Banshee is an Irish fairy woman. If she cries, do you know what happens?
Someone's about to die.
Yeah, you won't die. Some people think you die. No, no, no. Somebody belonging to you will die, or somebody in the neighborhood will die. It's like a warning. Now, I meet people all the time who've seen and heard a banshee. My own brother, who was in the Air Force, 6 foot tall, left a girl called O'Hara home because they followed O's and Max. And he heard one, he saw one, jumping from tree to tree. And he started stripping off his RAF Air Force uniform, showing bits. My mother said he came just in what we would call a singlet, his undershirt, eyes staring at his head, and the girl, O'Hara's grandmother, died that night. So my own brother told me that. But here's a quick story. If you drive up the road that leads between Belfast and Derry, you've probably all seen Derry Girls. If you drive up that road, there's a town called Dungiven. And my story starts and ends there. All the land around Dungiven was owned by the O'Cahans. Nowadays it would be called O'Kane. And the O'Cahans had 5 strong sons and 1 beautiful daughter. Her name was Finvola. And because she was the only girl, anything she wanted, she received. Her father and her brothers spoilt her. In fact, she got educated, taught to read and write, at a time when girls didn't get an education. At that time, there was a lot of trade between Ireland and Scotland, and the O'Cahans were all heading for Scotland, and a storm blew up, and the ship was wrecked on the rocks. They wondered how they'd get home, but coming towards them was a ship rowed by Norsemen with helmets on their heads, and standing tall in the prow, a big Highlander with the plaid and the bonnet with the feather. His name was Angus Old MacDonald. His father was the Lord of the Isles, and he brought them back to his castle and gave them hospitality. But during that time, Angus got to Finvola to Angus, and love blossomed between them. And so when she came back to Ireland, she brought his heart. He pursued her, begged her father for her hand. No, my daughter's not going to Scotland. No, my daughter's staying here. But father, I love him. The father could refuse her nothing. They agreed on one condition, and that was if anything were to happen to Finvola, Angus must promise to bring her body back for burial to Ireland. Of course, what young couple think of death at a time like that? They agreed. And they were very happily married. 3 children. But when the youngest baby was born, Finvola took a fever and she died. Angus was heartbroken. But then he remembered his promise. How could he bring her body back? No. They needed to bury her there. And sure, by the time the word would reach Ireland, she'd be buried. Nothing they could do. But the O'Cahans, like many a family whose name starts with O or Mac, had that family banshee. Grania Roll Can. She cried 3 nights running. The banshee cried on the hilltop. Everybody who's dead, who's been prayed for, there was only one person missing. Her father knew in his heart his daughter was dead. He armed his men, set sail for Scotland. The Scots saw them coming. They armed themselves for their Irish princess. But Angus was a man of honour. He said no. She came to me in love, and in love I must return her. And he loaded her body onto that ship, and they sailed back to Ireland. So if you go up that road between Belfast and Derry, take a turn off the main road. And as you go into the town of Dungiven, there's an old churchyard there, a priory. And that is where the body of Finvola O'Cahan rests to this very day. Thank you very much.
Having a good time so far? Yeah. Oh, good. Let me try to get you to laugh. I don't know. I have a 45-second story. May I share it with you? Yeah. Why am I asking you for permission, right? Okay. Well, there was a story about this father, a loving father, a good father, a kind father, but not a very smart father. And he was working on his jigsaw puzzle, the one that his family gifted him for Christmas. He finished his jigsaw puzzle and then very proudly walked up to his family who were cooking in the kitchen, and he said, "You people think I'm so dumb. Well, I finished that jigsaw puzzle in 3 weeks, and the box said 3 to 6 years. All right. Good. Thank God. Okay, I paid a lot of you. Yeah. Joel Ben Izzy was almost not here. He was returning from a recent trip to Israel to attend for a family member, and he needed to wake up at 2:15 in the morning, that's like the witching hour, to catch his 6:25 flight out of Tel Aviv. And he left comfortably, peacefully, and then the missiles started flying. If he would have waited 5 more minutes, he'd still be there, and we wouldn't have the opportunity to hear his stories. So I just wanted to share that with you. It's interesting how life treats us, how God treats us. One of the wonderful things about being an MC and listening carefully to the feature tellers is that you realize they all have something interesting to offer each time. And I think it's our job as an MC to try to find what that is so that we learn more about who these tellers really are as human beings and how they became inspired to be storytellers. I want to talk about Joel and the type of storyteller he is in a little bit more personalized fashion since I've known him for a long time. He dreamed of becoming he wanted to be a writer and a storyteller for a long time, but he came about it through an astonishing journey. He awoke one morning after a serious operation, serious surgery, and he couldn't speak. Lost his voice. And the doctor thought at first it was temporary, but in fact, it turned out to be permanent. Now, Joel's philosophy was, now what do I do? How can I tell stories and travel? How can I travel and tell my stories? How? Not that I can't do it anymore. Well, at the same time, I had no idea who Joel was. This was circa, I think, about maybe 2005, 2006. I didn't know Joel, he didn't know me, but I lost my voice. And that's not a good thing for a communication professor, a radio personality. I didn't have a voice. I had a problem with my lyrics, which was identified later, but I was losing my voice, right? And my mother, who could walk at the time, used to love shuffling through bookstores. And she was worried about me. My family was worried about me. I was worried about me. And she walked through a bookstore and she saw this book entitled The Beggar King and the Secret of Happiness. And she looks inside of it, and these are some snippets that she wrote to me. She wrote this in the inside front cover, and I have her permission. Just some snippets. I know you're struggling with your voice. You're scared and sore, all of us. I know that you need your voice like a tailor needs threads, and you have no thread. You're an educator with a lot to say, but no one can hear you. Maybe we should stop crying for just a little while, because I came across this book. The author miraculously found a voice that he thought he may never find again. Hank, I want you to read it. I'm not sure why. I just have a feeling you should. Well, Joel has always believed that stories can have the power to change lives. Well, his stories certainly changed mine. And if you're open, he may change your mind as well, both tonight and tomorrow at 3 o'clock when he does a program about the Beggar King. Joel?
Thank you, Hank, for that lovely introduction. And thank you, Alton and Liz, for those beautiful stories. Let's hear it for them again, please. And wow, am I delighted to be here, and I feel lucky to be here. I feel really lucky to be here. You heard that story a little bit about making the plane in Tel Aviv. It was as we landed in London, all these texts came in and they said, "Did you make it? Are you alive?" And we had no idea of what was happening then. And then I feel lucky to be able to speak, and I'll be telling that story tomorrow. And I feel lucky in all kinds of ways. And I was thinking about luck because today is Friday the 13th, right? And what's lucky? Lucky is a penny. Pennies are lucky, and you're donating pennies. Bring all your pennies tomorrow. They're collecting them for the festival, piling them up back there. I feel lucky with the weather here in Texas. I thought it was going to be hot and miserable. Can we turn the mic down a little bit? There's a little bit of a high spot there. A little bit of something there, maybe. I thought it was going to be hot and miserable, but it's gorgeous out. And I learned what Texans do when it's a beautiful day like this. They talk about how hot it's going to be in 3 months. I was very impressed by that. So I feel lucky to have been here to catch this weather. I think pennies are lucky. I feel lucky to be able to tell you stories. And I feel lucky just to be here all around. And I got to say, in Hebrew, in Jewish tradition, when we say good luck, we say mazel tov. Say it with me. Mazel tov. Now say it like you mean it. Ready? Mazel tov. If you're at a Jewish wedding, somebody stomps on a glass, they shout. Mazel tov. Baby's born, a brisk celebration, you shout. Mazel tov. Hank wins an award, we shout. Mazel tov. Mazel tov. Right. And so Mike falls down, you shout. Mazel tov. Yeah. Someone breaks it. Mazel tov all around. So it's a great Jewish expression. It literally means good stars or good luck. And here I am, and so far, today, just to be safe, I made 13 wishes. Thank you, Lynn, suggested for Friday the 13th, 13 wishes. So far, so good. And I'm wearing my lucky hat. And after I tell you the story, I'll tell you just a little story behind the lucky hat. But here's the question for you. Here's the question I want to ask you. Thinking about life. The life we lead, the life you go through, there's luck. And then, in life, there's also wisdom. That is wisdom. We tell these stories, these old stories of such rich wisdom. And if you were to choose between luck and wisdom, I'd like each of you to think which you would choose. Luck or wisdom? Give it a moment of thought. And then we're going to just hear a couple of responses, just to see what it is, see what you come up with. A moment of thought, would you choose, if you had to choose between luck and wisdom? Give it a few seconds thought. How's that? By the way, luck, the sign for luck is like this. Try it, everybody, try it. The sign for delicious is the finger here, like this. Is that delicious? Oh, it's like this. But luck is like this. Wisdom is like this. Yeah? Okay. So, that's the question. What would you choose, luck or wisdom? Who could tell us what they would choose? Just let's hear it from a couple people. Wisdom, tell us why. Luck is blind. He said, yes. Wisdom, you can count it, luck is blind. Beautiful answer. Who would choose luck? Who could tell why? Yes?
I know I'm supposed to say wisdom, but I just want some luck.
Yeah, I love that. I know I'm supposed to say wisdom. I kind of just want some luck. And if you can't be honest at a storytelling festival, where the hell can you be honest? So you just want some luck, right? Well, that's another argument for wisdom. Who would choose wisdom? Well, yeah. Say that again? Wisdom is something you can draw on again and again. And who would choose luck? All right, yeah, right.
It's more reliable.
Luck is more reliable than wisdom. All right, you've heard some arguments for luck. You've heard some for wisdom. We're going to vote. Who would choose luck? Let's see. Yeah. Who would choose wisdom? Check it out. Now, I'm not going to get into the intricacies of counting votes in Texas. Because I am wise enough not to go there. But I got a feeling that a lot of you are thinking like Betsy. They're like, well, I really should choose wisdom. Let me just ask, this question. It was a clear vote for the no electoral college situation here. It was a clear vote. If I was to tell you this was an old Jewish folk tale, you think the story has a right answer? It does. This is that rare story, but it's not ambiguous. It has a very clear answer. It goes way back. Way back. And so the story of luck or wisdom goes like this. It was long ago on a mountain that luck and wisdom were having the same debate we had just now. And they were talking about what was more important in life, luck or wisdom. I'm not trying to put you out of a job. I just love the signs. I love the signs of the story. By the way, if I did just certain learn some signs. This is story. Beautiful. Try luck. Wisdom. All right. So luck and wisdom were having the same argument. They said they'd been on top of a mountain and they were talking about what was more important, and luck said, you want to know what you need in life? In this life, what you need is luck. Luck is what you need. And wisdom said, oh, no. Wisdom is something you can build. Now, who cares about that? Luck is what you need. Luck. You sound like Alton's rubber chicken. Luck. Wisdom. No. What you need is luck. Wisdom. Luck and wisdom have been having the same argument for 10,000 years. Hasn't gone anywhere back and forth. But this time was different. Because this very night, as they were speaking, a baby was being born in the valley way down below. And this baby was being born, and they decided that this baby would be either lucky or wise. Good idea, an experiment. Now I have to tell you that this valley was way down there. It was a cold and rainy night, and in this valley was a house, but you couldn't even call it a house, you'd call it a shack. But you wouldn't call it a shack, you'd call it, because it was like corrugated tin walls, the water was leaking through, and it was falling over, you'd call it a hovel. But you wouldn't even call it a hovel, you'd call it, you know what? You'd call it, where I live in California, this would be like just a $1.5 million fixer-upper that you couldn't even, you had to tear it down and start all over. So, I mean, one of those crumbling places, and they decided one of us would enter the baby because that baby was being born to a very poor couple. And wisdom said, good idea, wise to do an experiment. But which one of us shall enter the baby? And wisdom said to luck that, and luck said, let's do this. Let's flip a coin. Winner gets to choose who goes in that baby first, luck or wisdom. They flipped the coin. Who won the coin toss? Luck. You can be as wise as you want. You're never going to win a coin toss. But that meant luck got to decide who goes first. And I have to tell you, I love the sound of that train. It seems to punctuate. So just taking a moment from that, my grandson is 1.5 years old now. And when a child is born, time splits. There's before and after. And things change. And it's like that instant of that magic moment. And so as this baby was being born, something slipped into him. And this child was very young when he opened his eyes. He looked out at the world. He took in everything he saw with wonder. And the very first word he said was, why? He was curious. He wanted to learn. Because this child was wise. Luck had won the coin toss, but let wisdom go first. And this child was wise. Now the Talmud, a Jewish book of knowledge, said, who is wise? The one who learns from everyone they meet. So this child watched his father, who was a wood carver, carving a piece of wood. And even though he was a very young child, he watched so closely that when his father put down this wood carving, by the way, I should just mention here, just as an aside, there is a very ugly wood carving here that Dalton made. You don't want to bet on it. In case you're thinking about it, it's like you think, why would anybody buy? Just don't even. But just in case you think about wood carving, I had to mention that, Dalton, just in case. So from a whole pear tree, it's curved like this. So don't even bet on it. It's with my luck if you did. But this child's father was a wood carver, and as he was carving away at this piece of wood, he put down the knife. He put down the wood, and the child walked over there and picked it up. And because he watched closely, he was able to carve safely. And he was as good a wood carver as his father just by watching, not because he was lucky, but because he was. Now his mother was a talented seamstress. And he watched her sew. And as he watched her sew, she put down the needle and the thread and the cloth. And just by watching, suddenly, he was able to pick it up. And he was a talented tailor. Just by watching. He learned everything from everything he saw. Then he went to school, and he watched his teacher. Not only did he learn all that the teacher had to teach, but he learned how to teach. So that by the time this young man came of age, he was a skilled wood carver, tailor, and teacher. Not because he was lucky, because he was wise. Now, word of his wisdom spread all the way to the king, who said, "What's that? There is a young man in my kingdom who's a wood carver, a tailor, and a teacher. I shall hire him to work in the palace. He shall be paid the salary of 3, benefits of 1. It's a good deal. Young man, you're a wood carver, carve me a new throne. A tailor, sew me royal robes. Teacher, go teach people around the palace all kinds of things." He did very, very well, this young man, because he was. We'll come back to him in a minute. The king had a daughter, the princess, and she was. No, not really. She was. Huh? Are you hearing? Are you hearing? I shouldn't just say she's beautiful because we shouldn't objectify her. Because are you thinking you shouldn't say that? She was beautiful, but that's not what's interesting about her. She wasn't particularly lucky. She wasn't wise. She was beautiful, but it was interesting. She was. Not especially kind. No. You know what she was? She was smart. Now, smart and wise is a nuanced distinction, right? The difference between smart and wise. Let's think about that. They say a smart person can get out of a difficult situation, but a wise person knows how to avoid it in the first place. Or they say that it's easy to be wise. Just think of something smart, but don't necessarily say it. Or, I was telling the story once, and an Israeli said, "I'll tell you the difference between smart and wise. A smart person knows that the tomato is not actually a vegetable, but it's a fruit. But a wise person knows not to put it into a fruit salad." So there was smart, there was wise. She was smart and also kind of stubborn. And smart was a problem because you see, her father was not particularly smart. He was, as we heard before, a few sandwiches short of a picnic. He was maybe not the brightest bulb in the chandelier. He was, who else has got, not the sharpest tool in the shed. Somebody else, you must have somebody else. Who else? Say it again. Thank you. You should take a wood carver. Few bricks shy of a load. What else? Night was on, nobody's home, right? Somebody fell in a stupid tree, hit every branch on the way down. He couldn't blow out his brain. He couldn't blow his nose if his head was filled with dynamite. There's many things to say. He was that guy. And he was often doing, anyone more of these? I collect them. Say that again? I like it. An egg short of a dozen, and we'll add to that a few fries short of a Happy Meal, right? So he was that guy, not too bright, and he was often making foolish decisions, and his daughter was often pointing out. So he got the idea, he called her and said, "Daughter, I have decided that you should get married." She said, "You've decided I should get married?" "Yes, that's right." "And have you decided who I should marry?" In fact, they have. "In fact, I've decided you should marry the prince from the next kingdom over, Prince Blah Blah." Prince Blah Blah? I met Prince Blah Blah once at a royal ball. He has the personality of sawdust. No, you're going to like him. He's coming to dinner tonight. And who came to dinner that night? It was Prince who talked about the only thing he knew or cared about, which happened to be Prince. Join me with feeling, if you know the story. Ready? Blah, 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 blah. Come with feeling. Blah, 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 blah. She fell asleep in her soup. She woke up the next day and said, "Dad, I think that's settled. Not going to marry Prince Blah Blah." He said, "That's okay. Because there's another prince coming tonight from the next kingdom over. You're going to like him even better. That would be Prince Duh." Prince Duh, who came to dinner that night? It was Prince who talked about the only thing he knew or cared about, which just happened to be Prince. With a couple comments about Blah Blah. Join me if you know the type. Ready? Duh, 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 blah blah, duh, blah. He couldn't stand duh either. Then he said, "That's okay. Tonight we got Prince Nurkaner." Who came to dinner that night? It was Prince. Join me. Nurkaner, 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 Nurkaner. She did not like Prince Blah Blah, Prince Duh, Prince Nurkaner, Prince what's his name, Prince Thingamajig, who's he, what's it, Prince whatchamacallit, Prince Finger up the nose. She didn't like any of them. And finally, after meeting every prince anywhere around, she said, "Father, I think this is settled. I'm not going to marry any of them." He says, "No, now it's time to choose. Which one?" "Father, I'm not going to marry any of them." No, how about Blah Blah, Duh, no. He said, "Father, I could not marry any of these guys. These are self-absorbed idiots. All they do is talk about themselves. I can't possibly talk to them. Too bad, you have to choose. And too bad, I'm not going to choose them. In fact," you've seen the correlation between smart and stubborn. He said, "In fact, I'm not going to marry any of them. And in fact, until I find somebody who I can talk to, because I can't talk to them. So until I find someone that I can talk to, I am not going to say another word." You want to talk about this? Let me get this straight. You're not going to talk till you find somebody who you are willing to marry. So if someone can make you talk, you marry them, right? Very well. Bring back the princes. Well, so the contest began. The princess came back. She sat in her room, and so entered Blah 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 Duh 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 Duh. Huh? What's it called? Finger up the nose. Blah Blah Blah. She did not like any of them. They talked and talked till they were blue in the face, and finally left. King said, "Very well. If they can't make you talk, we'll open the contest up to the kingdom. You know how this goes. If you can make my daughter talk, you can marry her and have half the kingdom." Well, people lined up in front of the palace to try to make her talk. They couldn't. And when they failed, they got in line to try again. King says, nope, not fair. You get one choice, one chance. If you make her talk, you marry her. If not, we chop off your head. Oh, the line got shorter. The people got shorter with their heads cut off. And the princess, who was quite happy being single, had enough. Now, let's come back to our young man who he went to the king. He'd been watching everything he learned And he had a plan, because he was wise. And he said, Your Highness, I should like to try to make your daughter speak. And the king said, don't. Because if you try and you fail, we have to chop off your head. And then they have to hire a new wood carver, a new tailor, and a new teacher. He said, but I'm not going to fail. And he wasn't going to fail because he had a plan, because he was... Go ahead, your choice. He went to the room of the princess. Outside stood the guard with the axe, whose job it was to chop off the head. He said, Stop, young man. It's my job to hear if the princess speaks and chop the head off. When they don't, you've got a good head on your shoulders. I don't want to do it. He said, but I'm not going to fail. And he wasn't going to fail because he was... The guard said, Your choice, kid. Good luck. He walked past the guard. He walked past the princess and walked to a fireplace in the room where there were two beautiful silver candlesticks. And said, Hello, candlesticks, how are you? Candlesticks said nothing because candlesticks don't talk. He said, Candlesticks, I got to ask you a question. And it's an important question. Only you can decide. Princess watched him. Candlesticks, here's what happened. 3 friends went carving. Went camping. One was a wood carver. One was a tailor. One was a teacher. They took turns around the fire, watching the fire. First was the wood carver. And as the wood carver sat, tending the fire, the tailor, the teacher slept. The wood carver realized he was sitting on a large log. And as he was sitting on a large log, he said, well, I'm a wood carver. I'm going to carve this log into something. And he began to carve away at the log. And here's the thing, Candlesticks. He was a good wood carver. He was a very good wood carver. And he carved this log in the shape of a beautiful, beautiful woman. And woke up the tailor. Now the tailor saw this woman made of wood. He said, well, there's a woman made of wood, carved by the wood carver. I'm a tailor. I'm going to make her a gown. Well, Candlesticks, he was a truly skilled tailor. He didn't make just any gown. He made a beautiful white satin wedding gown. And then woke up the teacher. The teacher woke and said, look at this. The wood carvers carved a woman out of wood. The tailors made this gown. I am a teacher, so I will teach her. Well, Candlesticks, he was a skilled teacher, and a skilled teacher doesn't simply impart information. What they do is they build curiosity. They teach you enough to make you want to know more. And as he taught this woman made of wood, that spirit of curiosity rose inside. And when it finally rose inside, she wanted to know. She asked a question. The minute she spoke, she came to life. And when the sun rose, the tailor and the wood carver woke. And what did they see, Candlesticks? But there was that woman, carved out of wood, wearing this wedding dress, with the teacher talking. She had come to life. Now, Candlesticks, you see why I've come to you, because only you can answer this question. Who is it? Who is it that will marry her? The wood carver who carved her, the tailor, or the teacher. Each one had a claim, but which one? Which one? Candlesticks said nothing. But the princess said, I think it's her choice. And I think that he said, that's what I think. And she made her choice. And it's the one who made her speak. That is me. That is you. I will see you under the hoopah. And as he walked out, the guard grabbed him and said, nice try, kid, I warned you. Brought him to the center of the palace, placed him on the block, the chopping stone, lifted the axe high above his head. You look very confused here. Right. Did you hear him talk? You heard him talk? You heard her talk, right? Yeah, but that wasn't your job. That was the guard's job. And as luck would have it, the guard had been out late the night before at some storytelling festival or some such event and had fallen asleep and never heard her speak. I'm sorry. It's not nice to come to a storytelling festival and tell a story with a really sad ending. But I'm sorry, I don't make up the stories, I just tell them. Well, that's not entirely true. Listen, here's what happened. High up on the mountain, Luck turned to Wisdom and said, "Told you." Wisdom said, "Well, I can see your point." "My point? You don't have to see my point, old Wisdom. The point on the blade of that axe that's rushing through the air down to chop off that young man's wise head." "Yeah, all right, but tell me, Luck, what can you do that Wisdom can't?" Luck said, "May I? Very well. I've had my turn. Your turn now." Whereupon Wisdom stepped forward, waved his hand, and at that moment, a flock of birds flew over the palace. And as luck would have it, one bird, which had blue wings and orange legs and a red head, broke off from the flock and flew above and caught the eye of the princess, who was brushing her hair. At that moment, as luck would have it, a knot caught it and pulled her hair this way so she saw the bird, and her gaze fell on the young man just about to have his head chopped off, and she called out, "Stop! I'll marry him." And the blade stopped that far from his neck. And the two were married. And that is how it is with Luck and Wisdom. And aside from a little PTSD, which you would expect after this kind of situation, they lived happily, but as you can see, Luck and Wisdom are married. But in Jewish tradition, when you wish for one, you wish for the one that you can't control, yourself. And that is why we wish for luck. And that is why someone stomps on a glass, you will shout, which literally means good stars. Someone wins an award, Hank, you shout, Mazel Tov. Michael, Mazel Tov. You shout that but, and it's not a Jewish story without a but I always ask audiences what they like best. Luck or wisdom. I listen to their answers. My favorite answer is from a girl, she must have been about 8 years old. I said, "What would you choose?" She said, "I would choose wisdom." I said, "Great, why?" She said, "Because I already am lucky." And I thought, that girl is wise. I've told this story many times, and tonight as I tell it, it has a different twist. Partly because I feel just lucky to be here, to be traveling around the world, telling stories, doing this, to have made it here, to be able to speak, and I'll tell that story tomorrow. But also partly because of, well, this hat. This looks like a cowboy hat. This hat's from Rwanda. This is what they call an old man hat in Rwanda. Anybody been to Rwanda? You must go. And if you go to Rwanda, you must see the gorillas. It changes if you have some idea that humans and animals are somehow separated, seeing them out in gorillas is something. I had been to Rwanda helping collect stories from women who were recovering from the Rwandan genocide by becoming coffee entrepreneurs and growing coffee and rebuilding their lives. People whose husbands had been killed and husbands were in jail for killing the first one. They came together, they worked, they sang. While there, back in 2015, I went up to see the gorillas and stayed in a little village nearby. And when you're like a Mazunge, a white guy, walking through Africa, kids just flock to you. But one kid really struck me because I met him and I instantly realized this boy is so sweet. And he was born under a bad star, an unlucky star. And I saw it with his hand. He had a hand that's backwards, turned around backwards. But I also, after the other kids left, he wanted to know what I was doing there. And I told him I liked stories. He said, "I have some books of Rwandan stories." And he came, his name was Pacifique, and he gave me a tour of his town. And he shared his books of Rwandan stories with me. And he told me his story. And like so many Rwandan stories, it's heartbreaking. There have been many flare-ups since the great genocide that we know about. And in one, his parents were hiding in the jungle. And that's where he was born. And because there was no medical care, he was pulled out by his hand, which is why it turned around backwards. So he really just can't use this hand, the right hand. It just hangs like this. And not long after he was born, his parents were both killed. So he ended up going to be raised by his grandmother. He showed me his home. It was really, literally dirt poor. Nothing inside, but he was so kind, and he loved stories. And introduced him to my wife, and we decided that we would help support his education, because he really wanted to learn. You talk about a teacher, you talk about curiosity, he was like that woman made of wood, except he was a real young boy. He wanted to learn everything. So what we did was we sent money when we could, and my wife and I came up with a plan, because I have a bunch of CDs. I said, you know what? All the money from CDs will go to support Pacifique's education in Rwanda. And we would send, and my wife made cleaning products that are non-toxic. She sold them, and we sent this money to support this education. That was 2015. And then back in 2024, I went back to Rwanda, and I went for a conference with a group called Core Africa. And this is like the Peace Corps, but it's Africans. It's young Africans volunteering in their own countries. And they work with the best values of helping people empower girls, helping community find resources. And I got to see Pacifique again. By this time, he was graduating from college. And he came to this Core Africa conference and said, that's what I want to do. And so he became a volunteer for Core Africa. And this past summer, my wife and I went. And I got to say, in terms of things you remember in your life, he'd come from a dirt poor village in the north. He was working in a dirt poor village in the south, organizing them, helping them put together resources, helping them build kitchen gardens. And he showed us around what he'd done in the nurseries they'd started, the pig farm they'd started. And suddenly this town loved him. He was doing all this really because he was working with something far more important than luck or wisdom. He was working with something that is so important, and I guess I thought of this yesterday because I was very impressed. I've flown to a lot of places. It's the first time I have ever flown to an airport that's actually dedicated to this. I was so moved. He is leading with love. And I flew into Love Field. Betsy came and picked me up. Love is more important than either. And he showed us this. He introduced us to his fiancée. They were married. And as I tell you the story tonight, they're now arriving at the hospital this morning in Rwanda for her baby to be born. This baby that I hope is born under a lucky star. He's certainly lucky to have such loving parents as Pacifique and Julienne. And I wrote to him and asked him if I could tell you stories. And he said, yes, please tell the story so they hear a happy story from Rwanda. And at this time in the world, we need to hear good stories about things happening. It's Pacifique, it's all these other volunteers rebuilding Africa. I tell you, there are signs of light and hope in the future. And if I could ask you to indulge me, he said, give them my love. And I wondered if I could, I've never done this before, I could give your love back to them. Could I ask you to all do this? And I'm just going to send this to Pacifique. Thank you. So that's all by way of saying, this hat reminds me I'm lucky to have met this young man. He feels it was the luckiest moment in his life that he met me, but I was the lucky one that met him because there is no greater good fortune than to be able to help another. That's truly what luck is. And for my part, if you're interested, there's my books back there, of course, but the CDs, all the money from the CDs, which are $10 or whatever you want to donate. Or if you want to take them, you can take them for free. But if you want to donate anything, you can. All that money will go to Pacifique and Julienne for their baby, whose birthday will be March 14th. A day after, Friday the 13th. Born hopefully under a lucky star with love all the way from Texas. Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
I just had an epiphany. I don't have them often, so listen tight. Okay, it was an aha moment, Elizabeth, and more than I could possibly count. I always look for different reasons to love storytelling. I think all of us do. And there's a quotation, there's a Yiddish quotation that says, what is truer than truth? The story. Now, I heard that all my life, and I had no idea what it meant, and frankly, I didn't care. But some of you have heard me tell stories about my grandmother before. My grandmother, my mother, and my grandfather were Holocaust survivors, and I heard those damn stories all of my life. Man, I really experienced the trauma along with them. And one time I remember asking my grandmother, does everything have to be in story form? And she said, yes. I asked her why, and I finally realized the most powerful reason we tell stories. She said, we told stories while we were in the camp for the same reason why we sang and danced. Because not only did we want to entertain each other, but we didn't want anything else to deprive us of life. And these feature tellers reminded me of that tonight and this morning. And Lynn, you will too, because we're going to introduce Lynn, and I didn't want her to feel out of it. Lynn? Lyn Ford is an award-winning, internationally known Afro-Asian storyteller and Ohio teaching artist. I wanted to say that she's also, is it a Thurber? I think, was it a Thurber writing? Okay, good. A Thurber writing mentor, published author and poet, an interactive play-centered workshop leader, and I love this in particular, a certified laughter yoga teacher. I mean, who does that, right? That is unbelievable, right? I mean, how do you pass a laughter test? To be a certified, never mind. Okay. She's also a member of the National Association of Black Storytellers, Circle of Elders, and she warmly asserts in her own self-description that she says, I loved to sit knee to knee with elders who offered wisdom and humor. And two words that I think describe Lynn best. She's a true multicultural maestro, and I really think that says it all. So get ready to laugh, we hope, regardless of who we are, because clearly she can make all of us laugh, right? Lyn Ford.
Thought I might give you a laugh right now. Coming from the depth of Joel's stories, which touched my heart. I think all our hearts are connected right now. So I'd like for you to sit like the kings and queens that you are, so that you get a little taller in your chair. I want you to put a big smile on your face, regardless of how you feel. Attitude can be everything. I'd like for you to look to the person to your left or your right, in front of you or behind you, and when I count to 3, you will say, "You look good." Ready? 1, 2, 3. Good. how gorgeous you are, keep in mind you have been complimented. And in Western cultures, we don't necessarily take compliments easily. We have to make excuses. Oh, I love your shoes. I got them on the sales table for $15. Who cares? You have been told that you look good. And so when I count to 3, you're going to look towards someone else and you're going to say, yes, that's true. And so do you. 1, 2, 3. Yes, that's true. Okay, our next affirmation. You're going to hold your hands out to receive all the goodness that we need to find these days. And on the count of 3, you're going to say, life is wonderful. 1, 2, 3. Life is wonderful. All right, now you're going to get your attitude on for the last one. You're going to put up one hand. Doesn't matter whether it's your left or your right. You're going to wave it back and forth. You're going to rock your head a little bit. Get a touch of soul in there. And when I count to 3, you're going to say, honey, you ain't seen nothing yet. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Honey, you ain't seen nothing yet. Give yourselves a hand. Joel talked about wisdom and being smart. And I don't know if the little girl in this story from my family was particularly wise, but I do know that she wasn't particularly smart. You see, she was supposed to milk the cow before the family went to evening prayer meeting. And she loved going there. She loved to read all the hymns. She was a little girl, but she could already read. She'd been reading since she was 3 years old. She loved to read scripture, sometimes right along with the preacher, which would make her mama kind of pinch her leg a little bit, get her to shut her little mouth. And so she was already dressed to go to church in one of her favorite dresses, all clean and starched, and she was wearing a pair of lacy socks and a pair of shiny patent leather shoes to milk the cow. She took the bucket out to the barn and she proceeded to milk that cow, and she did a good job with that. But she was so happy about things, when she'd finished with her chore, she picked up that bucket, she thought about where she was going. The bucket was full, and Bessie didn't always give that much milk. And she was feeling so happy. She started hopping and skipping and wiggling and dancing and hopping and skipping and wiggling and dancing. And milk was flying everywhere. And pretty soon her dress was soaking wet, and milk was running down her legs and onto those socks and over those shiny shoes. And when she realized what a mess she had made of herself, she shook and dropped the bucket, and the rest of the milk poured out on the ground. And that little girl looked at the situation, and she said, oh, I wish there was somebody that could help me, because Mama gonna be mad, and Daddy gonna be mad, and I'm gonna be in trouble. I wish somebody could just pop up and help me. And somebody popped up. There was a little devil, no taller than she was, an imp, all red, with pointy ears and a long pointy tail. And he looked at her and he said, hey, little girl, if you give me something. Little girl said, I know who you are. Heard about fellas like you. And I know what you probably want too. The little devil said, yeah, you know what I want. And you so little, it shouldn't be a problem for you to give it to me. You ain't lived too long. Little girl said, that's right, I ain't lived too long. You can't take my soul yet. I appreciate your help, but you can't take my soul yet because I ain't even lived long enough to have a big soul. I just got a little bitty soul. So if you help me out now, well, maybe I'll let you take it, but not right now. Well, that little devil wasn't too brave. He just come into his job. And he thought, well, that's all right with me. As long as you don't give me any argument or fight when I take what you got to give. Little girl said, Well, you got to give me some time. Remember, I'm just a little girl. You know how to tell time? Little devil said, tell time what? You know how to keep time? Little devil said, keep time where? You know how to read the calendar? Little devil said, what's a calendar? No, I don't know how to read a calendar. I don't know how to read anything. Little girl said, oh, okay. Then I will give you my soul without any fuss or any argument if you come back for it in 81 years. And that little devil said, sounds good to me. And now I'll do something for you since you're going to give that soul to me in 81 years. And that little devil snapped his fingers, and her shoes were clean and shiny, and her socks were crisp, and the lace was clean, and there was no milk on her legs, and her dress was tidy and seemed to be pressed, and the bucket had tipped itself back up and filled all the way. Little girl looked at that, she said, thank you very much. See you in 81 years. And that little devil said, good deal. And he disappeared. The little girl picked up that bucket carefully. And she didn't hop. She didn't skip. She didn't wiggle. She didn't dance. And when she got home, she set that bucket of milk beside the back door, and her mama came out and realized her daughter had milked the cow in one of her best dresses. And her mama and daddy were amazed because she was spanking clean. But they took her hands and they went to church. The little girl read scripture with the preacher till her mama pinched her leg a little bit. But she knew how to read all those words. She knew about words. She listened to what the preacher said, and she opened up the hymn book when it was time to sing, and she read every word as she sang it. Little girl knew about words. Well, time passed, as time does. And after a long while, little girl wasn't a little girl anymore. She was a little old granny woman. And she was sitting on the front porch in her rocking chair while the family was busy inside her house. 81 years had passed, and it was her 90th birthday. And she knew who would be coming. She sat there in a pretty dress, a pair of raggedy old shoes. And when the sun went down, up popped that little devil. And he pulled on his red ears and he swung his red pointy tail. And he said, "Little girl, I'm here. Remember, no argument and no fight. You give me your soul." And the little old granny woman said, "All right, I'll do what I said I would do." And she bent down low in her rocking chair. And she ripped off the bottom of one of those raggedy shoes. And she held it out to the little devil. And she said, "Here's my soul." But that little devil grabbed that thing. He said, "Girl, this is a mess. What did you do with it?" But she gave it to me without any argument or fight. So I'll take it. And since you kept the bargain, and I got your soul, I'll never bother you again. And that little devil disappeared, which was what that little old granny woman figured would happen. Because since she knew he didn't know nothing about words or time or reading, he was so ignorant that he wouldn't know anything about homonyms. Or the difference between an S-O-U-L and an S-O-L-E. Well, she kicked off what was left of that raggedy shoe, and she kicked off the other one, and she reached down carefully underneath her rocking chair, and she pulled out a pair of dancing shoes. And she put them on her feet and got up and straightened up her pretty dress and started to go inside to her family, because there was a party going on for her birthday. And it was time for her to still do a little hopping, a little skipping, a little wiggling, a little dancing, a little hopping, a little skipping, a little wiggling, a little dancing. Because it doesn't matter how old you are if you know you have soul. My last story for the evening is one of my favorites, and someone had asked me if I was going to tell it, and I don't know if she's here, but I am going to tell a story that came to me from my pop-pops. It's my version of the story that he had told me, and it's about a little old woman. I love little old woman stories because I am one. And she was sitting on the little dock next to the river, rocking in her rocking chair as she stitched a patch for a quilt with her finger protected by an old leather thimble that had been passed down to the women in her family for generations. She sat there rocking and stitching, but after a while her arms grew sore and her fingers grew tired, so she set that patch down on her lap and she stretched her arms and spread her fingers wide, and that leather thimble slipped off her finger and dropped down into the river and disappeared in the water. And the old woman said, "Oh, Lord." And the good Lord appeared. He said, "Oh, woman, what you want?" She said, "Well, my thimble just fell in the water and disappeared, and I ain't finished with it yet." Well, the good Lord reached down into the river with one great hand and drew up a thimble made of gold, studded with diamonds. He said, "Oh, woman, this your thimble?" And the old woman looked at it and said, "No." Good Lord reached down into those waters again and drew up a thimble made of silver, studded with rubies. He said, "Oh, woman, this your thimble?" And the old woman said, "No." Then the good Lord reached down into the water for the third time and drew up an old leather thimble. He said, "Oh, woman, this your thimble?" And the old woman looked at it and said, "Yes." And the good Lord was so impressed with her honesty, he let her keep all three thimbles. Well, time passed, and that old woman was walking next to the river, arm in arm with her old man. But he was too close to the edge of the water, and his foot slipped in the mud, and he sank down into the river and disappeared. Don't get ahead of me. And the old woman said, "Oh, Lord," and the good Lord appeared. He said, "Woman, what you want this time?" She said, "Well, my old man just fell in the river and slipped under the water, and I ain't finished with him yet." Well, the good Lord reached down into that river with one great hand and pulled up Joel and Izzy. He said, "Woman, this your husband?" She said, "No." Good Lord reached down into the water again and pulled up Denzel Washington. He said, "Woman, this your husband?" And that old woman said, "Yes." The good Lord said, "Woman, you know that's not your husband. Why you lie like that?" She said, "Oh, Lord, I didn't lie. It was self-preservation. You see, you pulled up one man, and I said that wasn't my husband. And I knew if you pulled up the third man, I'm too old to be taking care of three men at the same time. So, Lord, I didn't lie. It was self-preservation. I just told you what I needed to tell you to save myself." And the good Lord was so impressed with her creativity, he let her keep Denzel Washington.
You guys are great, right? tell stories, collect stories, because they really do remind you that you're never going to deprive yourself of a full life. And I want to thank our feature tellers for inviting us into the windows of their soul this evening. Lynn, Liz, Joel, Alton, you'll be here tomorrow. Don't miss it. In the meantime, be safe. Have a great evening.